someone from each side. Richard Fowler, the former political director for the Young Democrats of America, and Tim Miller is the former deputy communications director for the RNC, a former spokesman for former Republican presidential candidate John Huntsman. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having me,
Thanks.
Jamie.
Richard, first, can you tell us about the strategy your party's used and where you think you're positioned right now?
Well, I think the Democrats are in a very, very good position right now. I think we've seen everything from the president to Harry Reid to Nancy Pelosi standing their ground on this one, indicating that we're not going to negotiate with a party that's not willing to bring anything to the table. This is about putting the American people back to work, as well as making sure that our government works for the American people.
How significant, Tim, would you say that the Obamacare argument, for or against, has been part of the Republican strategy in all of this? And what's your estimation? Because then I want to show you a poll that actually gauges the public's support of Obamacare now versus before the shutdown. How big a part is that argument of the Republican strategy?
Well, look, long-term, Obamacare is winning turf for the Republican Party. We saw that in 2010 when Obamacare was the main issue on the ballot and Republicans won in a huge landslide, and we see that in the polls today. So what the party needs to do is be a solutions party and get to the end of this current dispute with some conservative policy results and then pivot to making the argument about the failures of the implementation of Obamacare looking ahead to the midterm elections.
So let's look at this poll together, and then let me let you, Tim, respond first, and then Richard. This is about how America feels about Obamacare, and it's interesting because there's been a slight tick in favor of it. I don't know if I can call it slight, but in any event, that's the direction it seems to be going. So has the Republican strategy of raising the issue of Obamacare, which is the law of the land, worked? Tim?
Well, look, these polls have moved a lot. If you remember, the Democrats were the ones who said that after the law passed, it was going to only get more and more popular once people saw it in action. And what we've really seen is the opposite. So, you know, a slight tick over the past month in the big picture is not that big of a deal. As we look to the failures in implementation, you saw even the New York Times wrote a big story on it this morning about those failures. It's going to continue to be unpopular as we see the failures of implementation, and that's what we've got to focus on both from a policy and a messaging standpoint in the Republican Party.
And what about that, Richard? Republican strategy or argument aside, again and again there are reports of people who want to take advantage but can't because of glitches in the website or the pricing. What can Democrats do about that?
Well, listen, I think there's a lot of people that are already seeing the benefits of the Affordable Care Act. 3 million young people back on their parents' health care insurance. 50 million people now can get coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But today I got an email from one of our listeners at the Fowler Show, and they indicated to me that they have been able to get into the exchange, register, and save $500 and still were able to keep their doctor. And these are the benefits of the plan and the benefits of the Affordable Care Act. What has happened is because of Republican extremists like Ted Cruz, who have went down this path of demonizing the law, the American people are not having enough time to be educated about the law. And if this administration had the ability to, instead of dealing with this government shutdown, to educate people about the benefits of the Affordable Care Act, not only would they get enrolled, but they would be overwhelmingly enrolled. And beyond that point, I think what we will see, what we saw when Massachusetts instituted the same law, is as we get closer and closer to December and closer and closer to enrollment date, more and more individuals will enroll in the healthcare exchange, and they'll get to see the benefits and finally get healthcare, which is amazing.
Tim, let me
Look, I'd say there are two things.
Go ahead.
I'd say there are two things that are wrong with that. First, if you look at the Chicago Tribune this morning, they had a story out about how deductibles are going to be double or triple under Obamacare. So I totally disagree that once it starts to get implemented, voters are going to like it more. And then secondly, at America Rising, we've been sending people to the Enroll Obamacare events across the country. Nobody's showing up. They're deserted. So the idea that people are excited about this right now is not evidenced by the facts.
Tim, I beg to differ with you, Tim, for a couple reasons. One, we're seeing people get involved. We're seeing people in Kentucky overwhelmingly enrolling in their health care exchange.
Only 5 people have enrolled in Iowa.
As well as the District of Columbia. You guys can point out 1 or 2 events or 1 or 2 red herrings as to why the law doesn't work. But if you talk to the 3 million young people that are back on their parents' health care insurance, or the young woman that emailed me today talking about saving $500 a month, she'll tell you why this law works.
All right, gentlemen, I think you could hear examples on both sides. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but I appreciate you presenting both sides of the aisle and the issue. Have a great day.
Thanks, Jamie.
Tim and Richard, great to see you.